Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
Wizards and Blazers in action tonight. Of course, you can hear that game here on your home for Wizards basketball, Team 980. And joining me to talk about what I think is a bigger story between these two teams, considering where they are at the standings and where we are at the calendar, is Tom Haberstroh, who is a great NBA writer and analyst. The Finder is his newsletter that you can get just delivered personally to you. He comes and hands it right to your inbox as often as he writes it, but also he's an analyst for the Blazers TV coverage. So I wanted to bring Tom on to talk about the trade that is about 10 months old at this point, Tom. The Deni Avdija trade. I remember doing our draft coverage last year, getting that news right as our radio show, this show ended, and we transitioned into, okay, hi, I'm the same person, but now we're in the draft show. And that's when that trade went down. And I still get a ton of YouTube comments from Blazers fans and from Deni fans about what we said that night and kind of the Wizards' willingness to trade him. So first of all, before we get into it, hi, how are you? And thanks for your time here on the show.
Oh, man, I'm doing great. It's great to be on here, especially considering, we're not at the playoffs yet. So it seems like people are still kind of coming around on the NBA season. The NFL is and March Madness is still trying to keep the NBA down, but we are trying with Blazers Wizards trying to puncture through. We're trying to lift that foot off of our throats and try to make sure that we can get some Blazers Wizards talk here. I am here for it, Craig.
Yes, indeed. So let me just ask you the neutral version of the question. We're almost a year into this. What do you make of the Deni Avdija trade for both Washington and how it's worked out for Portland?
I think it was a win-win. When you look at Deni Avdija for the Blazers, I had questions about his ability to space the floor when they made the trade. They've got a lot of wing players who have struggled to be a 40% three-point shooter. They got Toumani Camara. They just drafted Chris Murray. They got Jeremy Grant. It seemed like there was a glut of guys who had similar skill sets as Deni Avdija. I did not know how good this dude was. Avdija came in and struggled in the beginning, the first half of the season, to find his way. Chauncey Billups actually benched him, told him, hey, let's forget about it, integrating into the starting lineup. It's been up and down. Why don't we bring you off the bench? You can get your sea legs under you and try to get your comfort in the offense. And once he did that, I think it was around mid-November, Deni went nuts. He turned into this, give me the ball and I am going to bulldoze my way down the middle of the paint. No one's going to stop me. And he just became the best player on the Blazers. So it's really amazing to watch how he has developed this season, progressed this season to, he is playing at an all-star level right now at age 24. He's averaging 26 points, 12 rebounds, and 5 assists, almost 6 assists over his last 3 games coming into this Wizards game. And at 24 years old, there's only a handful of guys in NBA history who have done this at this age and did not make multiple All-Stars. So if you are having this type of production where he had 34 points and 16 rebounds and 6 assists, and then just continue to play at that level, you just don't get that many guys who aren't, all-NBA, multiple all-star talents who are able to do that. And Deni Avdija is doing that right now. And I didn't see this coming, especially after the first couple months of the season. It looked like Deni was struggling to find his way. He had some weird yips around the basket, he wasn't finishing at a high level. But what he does well, and the Turbo nickname that y'all gave him, is 100% accurate. He is a guy that is going to beat everybody down the floor and get to the rim. He has more and ones than any player in the NBA since the All-Star break. That is who he is. And given the price tag of giving up, the not just the 2024 first round pick or the lottery pick, which ended up being Bub Carrington,
right,
also the 2029 first pick. At first, I was like, man, that's a pretty big investment by the Blazers. But now I see it. This guy is a future All-Star.
So I don't disagree with you, but I will now put on my bad guy hat, because Every time Deni has a good game, I know about it because I went on a mini rant the night of the draft, basically saying, because Wizards fans were freaking out that they gave up on Deni Avdija. And my rant was essentially, Deni Avdija, by Wizards fans, is overrated. Not that he is not good, because Denny's a very good player. Not that he's not young, not that he was on a great contract. But this is a guy that I think on a true championship team probably caps out as a 4th or 5th starter or like an elite bench player. He's really good. That is a really important piece of a championship roster. But I don't know that he's the 3rd. He's definitely not the 2nd or the primary piece on a true championship team. That is a very, very high bar. And it's funny, I say I know when Deni has a good game because the Deni stands leave a comment or two every single time on that rant. It gets caught up in the algorithm.
There's a lot of Deni stands, I'll tell you.
There are. And look, I get it. He's a player from a country that does not produce a lot of NBA players. I understand there's geopolitics at play, and there's a million other things that go into some of the reasons why people are fans at Deni, and I do not begrudge that. And by the way, personally, I love Deni. I loved having him here. He's a great interview, great dude. Zero problems personally with Deni. I'm just realistic about what I think he is as a player and how hard it is to be better than the level that I just described in the NBA. It is a very rare talent. And like he had stretches here where he's doing what he's doing right now. They just weren't as long as maybe what he's doing right now. So what are you seeing that you think that this higher level of play that could get him on an all-star team, that could get him poking around an all-NBA team if it's what it's been the last 3 games? Obviously, it's just 3 games. But this like since post-all-star level, why do you think this is sustainable in a higher way that he could push up to that higher level in the long term? Because he is still just 24.
Yeah, so since the All-Star break, he's averaging 28 and 5 on 50% shooting from the floor and 40% shooting from downtown. That piece where he's able to space the floor on those kickouts is the kind of piece that I was curious about because I know that he's a battering ram at the rim. He's a guy that he's very fast. He has this knack for physicality that you rarely see, especially, for a young guy. Usually these guys, when they come in and they're just bigger than everybody else at 27, 30 years old, then you get that kind of no one's going to stop me attitude and I'm going to seek contact. I did not realize that this guy was such a magnet to contact. He loves lowering his shoulder and going straight into you. Duncan Robinson talked about this on his podcast over at JJ Redick's site, where he was like, that dude, Deni Avdija, is so strong. Sorry, I don't know if I can swear on this program, but he was
but luckily we're taping and I can bleep it out. So everyone knows what Tom just said.
Yeah. And Duncan Robinson was like, this guy put me in a body bag. And he didn't even, I think it was even an offensive foul that Duncan Robinson drew an offensive foul on Deni. But his point was, this guy is so strong. And you see it routinely. He had a game-winning or potentially game-winning and one against the New York Knicks over the weekend. And that's just who he is. He puts his shoulder into you. He's not pushing off. He's just going to go straight into you rather than do a Euro step. And he's going to power through. There is a question of how consistently can he do this and whether he's a 1 or a 2 on a championship team. That is less concerning to me considering that contract. The contract that they are on, the Blazers are on with Deni Avdija, $15 million for this season, $14 for next, $13 for the season after that, and then $11.8 million in 27-28 at age 27. So he's going to be coming into his prime, age 27 years old, and he's going to get paid the fewest that he's going to be paid for the rest of his career. If he was on the open market, I'm convinced that Deni Avdija at 24 years old, if he was a free agent this summer, he'd be getting $30 to $35 million based on his impact so far.
No doubt.
So the Blazers are like, dude, if we get this guy for the next 4 years playing at, let's call it 18, 8, and 5, basically, he's a threat to be a 20 and 10 and 5 guy every single night. May not get those averages, but in the same way that Jalen Williams for the Thunder, you would normally not say, like, dude, this guy's an all-NBA player, all-star player. But if he has the right pieces around him, he could be, I think, Jalen Williams is the kind of the comp for Deni Avdija. Is a guy who on ISOs, he's strong, he's big, he's not afraid of anybody. Can he be Jalen Williams for next to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? The Wizards don't have that guy, and the Blazers, as it appears, don't have that guy. Is that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, that magnet, that heliocentric number one, that 1A, 1B guy. And next to that, can Deni Avdija or Jalen Williams or someone like that win a championship? I think that's best case scenario. But for Deni Avdija, he is playing like an all-star caliber player. And I wonder if Tyler Hero, if the all-star was given out after the season, I think there would be more votes for a Deni Avdija than there is for a Tyler Hero. And unfortunately, the way the NBA works is you only have to be good for 20, 25 games in order to make the all-star game. But I wonder if the second half of the season was being voted on for All-Star, I would bet that you get a lot more people clamoring for Deni Avdija votes.
Tom Haberstroh with us here on the Hoffman Show. So the other thing with him is like he's putting up these numbers on a bad team. And again, like you watch it every day, which is why I want to have this conversation with you because I respect your basketball opinion. And you actually are someone who has watched a ton of Blazers basketball, which I don't know how that's going for your health, but they're not having the best of seasons. And the thing about the NBA is like there's going to be 100 possessions-ish per game per team, and someone's got to use those possessions. And so if you're the best guy on even a bad team, you can accumulate numbers. So I guess the long-term question before we switch over to what we make of the Washington side of this equation, because I want to get your take on that as well, is like, is the way that Deni's playing, is what he's doing, if he was getting the help that he was supposed to get from some of Portland's other young players that have been disappointing, would this be winning basketball?
Yeah, I mean, it has been winning basketball, or at least 500 ball for the last 2-3 months. So the Blazers got off to a horrible start, and then they won 10 out of 11 games. And since January 1st, so the calendar year 2025, they're 18-18 with a positive net rating, which is better than the New York Knicks, which is better than half the league. Like this is a team that's been playing good basketball, maybe not title contention basketball, but They've been playing better than most of the teams in the NBA for the last 3 months. So they are better than just a bad NBA team. So I hear you that like he's putting up these numbers for a bad team on the whole season, but since Donovan Clingan was getting a lot more minutes and Tamani Kamara has been playing like a defensive player of the year candidate, this team has been much better. And so Deni Avdija has been a winning player over the last couple months. And I don't think he's going to, lead this team to a 60-win season next year. But you can see that, if they continue to develop this Blazers team, they're going to be a winning team next season. They still need to find their guy. And I think Deni Avdija is developing into that. Like they don't have a guy who's averaging 20 points a game this season. Anthony Simons is close to that, but they still are looking for that like franchise cornerstone, and Deni Avdija is making his case right now.
Yeah, and of course they were hoping that Scoot Henderson would be that, Anthony, Deni, like there's some options there that of the young talent, but we'll see if anybody develops or if they acquire someone else and what's a deep draft, and obviously see what kind of other maneuvers can be made. So when you look at Washington side of it, because that's the other thing, of course, Deni stands and Portland fans, well, like, whoa, yeah, okay, Wizards guy. It's like, yeah, the Wizards are bad on purpose, and boy, are they good at being bad this year. But when you look at the decision that Will Dawkins made as the general manager to say, okay, Deni, we are selling high. He is good. This contract is insane. Anybody else is going to want it. We got the return, and kind of making the math work on the timeline, right? When Deni's going to have to get paid, that's when they want to start being good. And that's 3-4 years from now. They're hoping they're like really good then. And then, are there pieces that are better fit for the timeline? So what do you make of the Washington side of it? Do you buy kind of that argument, if you will?
Well, the 2029 first round pick, initially it sounds like, oh, that could be, top 5 pick, but actually it's the second most favorable of 3 different picks. So it has a pretty medium floor there. Is that when you're looking at the potential of that pick, it's the second most favorable of Portland, Milwaukee, and Boston in 2029. I'm going to bet that Boston is probably not going to be in that mix of like, you're going to be excited about getting Boston's pick. So it's going to come down to the Milwaukee side and Portland. You're betting, you're shorting those 2 franchises in 2029. With Giannis Antetokounmpo and with Chris Middleton out, and Damian Lillard is at the downside of his career, the back nine of his career. You can talk me into saying that Milwaukee pick could be pretty good if Giannis is like, yo, I want to play with Steph, and then he goes off to Golden State and they just rebuild. There's a big potential for Milwaukee to rebuild, which makes that pick really valuable. But the problem is you're only getting the middle of those 3 picks. So if Milwaukee is a top 5 pick and Portland is a 14 pick, you're going to get the 14 pick that year in 2029. So it's kind of the ceiling of that pick is mitigated somewhat by the way they structured that deal. But you also got Bub Carrington, who's, I think he's 20. Did he turn 20?
Not even 20
point?
yet.
Yeah. See, this is the thing about Bub is like, as good as he is right now, and we're seeing this with Scoot Henderson when he was this age last year, it's so hard to grade these guys without thinking about their age, but you have to do it. Is like, even though Bub Carrington has shown some promise this season, he's going to get so much better next year. And so when you're making a bet on a guy who's 18 years old coming into the draft and still just 19 years old, I think this is a solid return for the Wizards. And at the time, I would have said, this is a big risk considering Deni Avdija's contract going forward. But I guess my point is there's no high upside of winning the lottery with the trade package. But
Right.
if you do the draft right, you could get a really good player. Donovan Clingan is a really good player that the Blazers didn't get with a top 5 pick, and Bub Carrington also a really good player that they didn't need a top 5 pick. So on the Wizards side, I understand the thought about this deal. I just don't think. I guess I quibble with your Craig, the way it's like, if he's not the number 1 guy on a NBA team, a championship team, or a number 2 or number 3, then you got to get rid of him. I think that's tough. That's tough if you're a GM, if you're always looking at it like, if I don't see a reasonable trajectory as like the number 3 or number 4 on a championship team, then I got to sell.
Well, I think it's also where you are in your timeline, right? Because for the Wizards, like they don't have any of those pieces right now, right? Do they have the 1, the 2, or the 3? And it's like, if this guy's already are 4, and he's going to, by the way, because he's the best we've got, he's going to eat a bunch of possessions. What does that mean for the development of our young guys? Like, I actually go back to what you said at the beginning. I think both teams won. I think it's possible that you can have 2 teams at 2 separate timelines that need different things, and they can help each other out. And if you look at Bub Carrington as a young, cost-controlled asset with a super high upside, and Deni was a guy that they had a glut at that position, just like you thought Portland might. They knew they had Bilal, who they wanted to have the ball in his hands a lot more this year. And so they needed to kind of clear a way for the development of their wings. They wanted to say, they're also looking 3 years down the line when eventually Deni goes from the best contract in the league to a guy they're going to have to pay. Do we want to pay him at that point, or is he going to be pricier than what we want because of other moves we've made? And so there's an amount of both development and flexibility and selling high on the asset. Not to say that like, hey, we don't believe Deni can become really good, but is he going to become really good in the way we want for our championship team in the timeline we want? And I think that's something I've come to appreciate about how the Wizards think about this. And there's no telling that they're going to be right in the end, for sure. Like sometimes they sound like they're the smartest guy in the room, and I don't, or smartest guys in the room, and I don't always mean that as a compliment. And the way that phrase is not always complimentary, but I do think they do a good job of thinking 1 to 2 steps ahead of like, all right, hey, can we turn these second round picks into a late first? Because then we can trade from the late first into the lottery. And if we're stuck with a couple of seconds on draft night, we can't get to the lottery. So like I think of that with that 2029 pick too, is like we're still grading the test in the middle, and it might be not until 2032 with the way the Wizards are, if they can win this lottery and get Cooper Flagg, and we're in 2025. What's Cooper Flagg in year 7 in his prime, where we really understand going back in the same way that like when Tatum and Brown just won that title and we're going back to some of the trades with Paul Pierce and KG, they were like, oh, now we see the big picture the way the Celtics did it. I think that's the kind of timeline we're on with the Wizards, which makes defending it very hypothetical in the meantime, if you will.
Yeah, and this is the thing is the Blazers, I don't think thought they were going to be this good this year, like playing basically 500 ball for the better part of the season, where they're like, yeah, the Blazers looked at this season where it was like, we just want development from our guys. And now it's like, oh, Donovan Clingan can play right away.
Right.
Oh, Scoot Henderson's taken a big leap this year. And Deni Avdija is a legit all-star. We can see an all-star future with this guy. And I don't think they saw that it was going to be this good this season. And they didn't do anything at the trade deadline, which I think was a signal that they really believe in this core group. Now, there's downsides to that in the sense that you're not going to have as good of a draft pick this season, potentially, because there's just not as many ping pong balls if you're the 14th best team in the NBA versus the fourth worst team in the NBA. And so the Wizards are making a clear decision, which we've talked about 100 times on this program, is like pick a lane, pick a vision.
Yes.
And they definitely made their decision. I mean, I think the Deni Avdija trade is that's it on a billboard, is like, this is our direction. We are going to break this thing down to the studs. No more trying to make the play in every single season or try to be the 8th seed every single year and just get blasted in the first round. And I applaud that. It takes a lot of guts. And it's year 2, maybe 3 of this
Year
project.
2.
So this is when it's like the fan base is still behind you. It's just whether this continues in year 3 and in year 4, where we're all looking at OKC and saying, that's the goal. That's the model. We're all going to be OKC. But at the same time, you could be the Charlotte Hornets or you could be the Sacramento Kings, where like, even if you do get a couple guys, you're still going to be in that hamster wheel of mediocrity that you do not want to be in the NBA. And so that's what I hope for the Wizards, is that they hit on a couple of these picks, and Coulibaly and Bub Carrington. They are still so young. And I hope the audience there in DC can preach the patience that you need, because it's not going to be overnight. And I think OKC is an extremely, extremely outlier situation. And I really hope fan bases don't look at what Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Chet Holmgren and Mark Daigneault are doing and Sam Presti are doing in OKC and saying that's the blueprint. I mean, that's like saying we need to get a LeBron in the next year's draft. That does not happen.
That is
the
blueprint,
I'm big on Cooper
right?
Flag.
Like, that's the thing, is like, without one of them dudes, you're never winning anyway. So like, going all in and to get one of them dudes, which the Wizards have really stocked up in 2025. And obviously you're trying to make sure that they are in the best lottery odds possible for this year on a loaded draft. 26 is supposed to be loaded. So like, these next 2 drafts are the make or break, but ultimately you come down to some ping pong balls. The Wizards were also 1 ping pong ball from Wemby. So
I know.
That is pain. Tom.
Pain. And the Blazers were right there with Scoot Henderson at number 3. And they're happy with Scoot Henderson, but like watching Wemby. And dude, the scariest thing right now, dude, Wemby and Cooper Flag.
I mean, it could happen.
De'Aaron Fox just opted for surgery.
Yeah.
And the Spurs have the Atlanta Hawks pick as well. So you combine those 2 odds and you're looking at like, they have like the top 8, maybe top 5, close to top 5 odds on landing Cooper Flag. And look, you and I both know, like, Tim Duncan, how he landed on the Spurs is looking a lot similar to the situation in San Antonio. So I hate to say it to the Wizards fans, because I'm based in Charlotte and the Charlotte fans hear it all the time too. They never get lottery luck in the right year. And man, the Spurs are, from a lottery standpoint, they're terrifying.
They're somehow good at a lottery, which in life, I wish I could be good at the lottery. Tom Haberstroh, he's good at breaking down basketball. Search for The Finder. That is his newsletter. It's great. I get it every day. It is a must read if you're an NBA fan. Of course, he's also part of the Blazers TV coverage, which is why we had him to talk about this Deni trade from all angles. Tom, appreciate you're very generous with your time, sir. Very much appreciated. And we'll talk to you soon, my friend.
Thanks, buddy.
What's up, kiddos? It's your boy Clinton Yates from ESPN. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Tell your mama I said what's up.